We'll have like 2-3 minutes. Hi, everyone. We're going to start in around 2 to 3 minutes. Just give everybody a chance to hop in. We're going to get started very soon. I just want to make sure people can hear me. If there's any mic problems or if my screen sharing is looking kind of bad quality, just toss it in the chat. Let me know. Okay, we can get started. I'm just going to assume that I sound and everything looks okay. So please don't hesitate to toss something in the chat if things start to look bad. Okay, so we wanted to give you an update on the current Suicide Basin forecast for the Mendenhall River. We are, with the data coming in right now, it's a little bit slow to populate this page that I'm pulling up right now, but we are officially at close to a little past 13.9 feet. So we are basically at major flood stage now. It was a little bit slower of a crawl to get there, which is why we ended up having to pull the forecast back a little bit more. But right now we are sitting pretty solidly. This hasn't updated yet, but we are sitting pretty solidly right at major flood stage. So I'm gonna pass it off to Britton here to talk a little bit about the upcoming flood stages.
Thanks, Zoe. So,
like close to the mic, maybe.
Like Zoe said, we're currently crossing into major flood stage, and we're expected to crest from between 2 p.m. and 6 p.m. Thursday afternoon, and likely going to see that earlier crest time between about 2 and 4 p.m. But we do have that range of 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. And the crest right now is looking to be between about 15.8 feet and 16.3 feet, and with that median range of about 16.1 feet here in the next couple of hours. So we want to emphasize looking at an earlier time of that crest. Crest is looking a little bit lower, but still between now and when we're in that major flood stage, that's when we'll be really keeping a close eye on those HESCO barriers. That's the time frame we'll be monitoring the potential of some HESCO barrier impacts. So really just want to emphasize that for folks who live alongside the river, make sure that you're taking safety precautions, making sure that you're heeding all the advice from the Weather Service and from the City and Borough of Juneau, and just making sure that you're staying safe. And after that crest, the river level is expected to fall relatively quickly. But again, as long as we're in that major flood stage, is when we're really going to be keeping a close eye on those HESCO barriers and that crest time, most likely between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. But that range of 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. is likely when we'll see the crest of the river. So that is our current forecast, and I'll toss things back to Zoe.
And yes, we really want to reiterate that our crest timing is now 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., but we are leaning a little bit more towards the front of that time range. So 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. seems like the sweet spot right now, but we want to give, two or so hours on either side as a little bit of a buffer. But yes, 2 to 4 p.m. is the time that we are leaning towards. And yes, there is slightly lower of a crest height that we are expecting, between 15.8 feet and 16.3 feet. So now we just wanted to go over some of our impacts that we have in our forecast timeline. So you can find this on weather.gov/AJK/suicide basin. Very important. This webpage is updated every hour, typically by me. So I will be the one updating it when we're off this live. So it'll be updated right when we get off this live. But we can talk about, so this is the current hydrograph. So we have all of these hydrographs with the forecast on this page. So definitely check that out if you have not. And here's the forecast timeline, color-coded, very nice and very understandable to read. So right now we are crossing over into major flood stage. So this is the current observation that we have on our page. The page updates slightly slower than some of our observations come in here. And so we do know that we are we are reaching that major flood stage right now. So that's 14 feet that we are expecting. So some of those impacts, we definitely want to reiterate that so all the trails along the river are closed, including the trail at the end of River Road that connects to Brotherhood Bridge and the Montana Creek Trail that connects from Black Bear Road or Back Loop Road. Some of these areas along the riverbank haven't been hardened like other parts of the river, and so they're experiencing a lot of bank erosion. So we very much want to reiterate, stay away from the riverbank right now. If you look at some of the cameras, you can see a lot of big trees moving down the river. This is going to continue through the flood. So please stay away from the riverbanks and make sure you are aware that all of these trails are now closed, and we're going to continue with these closures as the river continues to rise. So let's go over some of these impacts. So we are seeing now that we're reaching 14 feet, we will start seeing parts of View Drive, the lower sections of the road, to be significantly flooded and becoming impassable. So we're going to start seeing water flowing over the road, flowing behind homes on the north side of View Drive. And then more homes along View Drive are also going to start to see that moderate to major flooding seeping in. Locations along River Road with lower riverbanks will also start to see this water approach their driveways at this time. And as we continue through major flood stage today, we are going to see some major flooding of multiple homes along View Drive coming up as the river continues to rise another foot. Water is going to start approaching a few homes along River Road, the ones particularly with lower riverbanks, and the possibility of driveways to be flooded with around 1 to 2 feet of water coming into the backyards. And we are expecting around 1 foot of water to cover Riverside Drive and near the Mendenhall River School. So we're seeing a question from someone in the chat talking about tides. So we have gotten this question a lot about how high tide will impact things. So our flood inundation maps, and I can pull those up right now. So if you go to junoflood.org, this is our glacial flood dashboard. And so this has basically the key to see all of these impacts and the flood inundation maps. So we can change this to what we're currently seeing, around 14 feet right now. And so this is the current flood inundation map. And we want to reiterate that all of our inundation maps and our impact statements and our forecast account for a high tide up to 20 feet, which is higher than what the high tide will be for today. So our forecast and our inundation flood maps and everything accounts already for this high tide. So it may seem like this may impact things. You're probably used to seeing the tide coming in and out and being very impactful for people who live right near the end of Mendenhall River. But with the way that we have done our forecast and created our maps based on that and all of our impact statements, we have accounted for a tide higher than what we will be receiving today, up to 20 feet. So if that answers your question, I hope that was clear. But if that doesn't, please ask me to clarify and I can continue. But yes, so this is a great page. So definitely check out this page. And there's a lot more information on this page, but this flood map is just very useful for what we're talking about right now. And so we can go back to the timeline and just continue to talk about impacts as we're coming up to that crest. So we are seeing that crest. We're expecting it to be between 15.8 and 16.3 feet. The timeline doesn't really like not the solid numbers. So we're just verbally saying 15.8 to 16.3 feet. That is the range that we are expecting. And we are expecting that around 2 to 6 p.m. Just to say that again, we are thinking this will be on the earlier side of this range, so 2 to 4 p.m., but 2 to 6 p.m. is our wider range. So once we see waters start to crest, that will be reaching 16 feet. Well, technically 15.8 feet. But once these waters start to reach this amount, then we're going to start to see overtopping over the bank and flooding low-lying areas near Wild Meadow Lane. And then we're also going to see up to half a foot of water in the intersections of Skaters Cabin Road and Arctic Circle. Some of the backyards of homes nearby will start to see flooding waters. And along with water approaching River Road, and especially near homes with low river banks and possibly flooding those homes. Water will also start to flood some backyards of homes on Meadow Lane and Stikeen Street. So be aware if you live in this area of the impacts that will be coming to you. And we also want to go over again that it does take 15 to 40 minutes, or 15 to 45 minutes after the crest at the lake for various portions of the river to see that crest as it moves down the river. So we have a lot of different gauges down the river. And so this is the river gauge that we have our forecast out for. So this is at the top of the river. And as we continue down, it will take an increasing amount of time between 15 to 45 minutes for these sites to reflect that crest. And so this is at Loop Road Bridge. And so this one will be next. And then if we keep going downstream, we'll see Montana Creek. And you can also really see how the tidal influence is being masked in these river gauges that are typically more tidally influenced. So it's really being masked. And so we are expecting to see that with this upcoming high tide as well. And then if we continue down the river, the last gauge that will reflect this change will be here at the Brotherhood Bridge gauge. And it will load in a moment. But yeah, you can even see the tidal influence being masked here, even though this one's a lot closer to where that tide will meet it. So that is what we're expecting to see. And by that 45-minute mark, this is when these locations that are all the way down the river will start to see that crest reflect there. So we'll stay on for some questions, and we can reiterate some of the information that we've been saying, just for anybody who may have joined late. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we're going to keep you updated if we see anything or anything different than what we're telling you. We will go live again. If we do have any issues with the HESCO barriers, we will go live immediately. So be prepared to see. We will also go live around the crest. So be prepared to see another live stream coming up And we'll try to keep you updated on social media in the meantime with more videos and more posts and everything like that. So if anybody has any more questions, we'll stay on for a few more minutes, and you can toss them in the chat. We'll be around, and we'll be monitoring the chat so we can see them. But thank you so much for tuning in. Thanks for tuning in, y'all. Well, we're gonna hop off the live now, but we got a question. The trails, I'm not exactly sure. I can't tell you exactly when they'll open up. It really depends on how much they were, if they were impacted by the flood, how much they were washed out. Some trails will definitely need reconstruction, so that may take a while. But depending on the on how the trails are, so you can see our forecast is really going to drop. Within the next day or so after the crest of things starting to come down. So once that water goes below that bankful state, then we'll start seeing some non-impacted trails open back up. But it really will be dependent on how much they were washed out during the flood. So some of the trails in back loop heading towards the glacier will most likely be impacted. As we've seen the past few years, they've been hit pretty hard by some of these flood waters. So those might take a little bit longer to open back up. But yeah, trails that are further away will definitely see that a little bit sooner, probably within the next 2 days. So the Tracy Arm situation, landslide and tsunami event that we saw last year, doesn't really have much to do with the Glacier Lake outburst flood that we've seen. So the flooding, because of the pressure of the water lifting up the glacier, it doesn't really impact the surrounding land as much as it does carve a path. Carve its path underneath the glacier more. So it's not really going to be as much of an issue for landslide impacts. That was the Tracy Arm incident was a very large landslide that happened, which displaced a lot of water within the inlet, and that created a very large tsunami. So we don't really see the landslide impacts with the Glacier Lake with Suicide Basin, just because of how it is
It's a
formed. Yeah, so I'm not doing the best job of explaining this, but no, those two events don't really correlate in the same way that you may think.
So the Tracy Arm and tsunamis are unrelated to the Gulf. So kind of like how Zoe was saying, the impacts to the Gulf are fairly close by, connected to areas near the glacier. So
yeah, and that may be more of a question about the receding glacier, but the Gulf also doesn't have that much. Doesn't have an impact on the glacier's retreat or anything like that. Actually, if the glacier retreats far enough back, then Suicide Basin will end up being exposed, so it actually would help our chances of the Gulf. But of course, that would be in many years. So yes, those two events don't really correlate in this situation. So. Yeah, so the river is definitely closed to boating. So we don't want anybody on the river banks because of erosion, but especially in the river itself. If you've seen the videos, you can see some of the crazy rapids that are happening right now, but especially the trees. So we have a lot of trees that are floating down the river, and they are very large, and they are very unpredictable, and there are a lot of them. So we're definitely advising no boats or any sort of rafting or anything down the river. Please stay away from the river, stay away from the banks. With the more people who are on the river banks, the worse the erosion will be. Yes, many years is a broad statement, and that's because I don't know the exact number, but it would be decades. With the rate that the glacier is retreating, Suicide Basin is around a mile into the glacier, and so as long as however long it takes for the glacier to retreat another mile, which at its current rate you could tell would most likely be a long time. And so that is a question that our senior service hydrologists would be able to answer for you if you are curious and you want to comment on any of our social media. But yeah, that isn't an answer I know off the top of my head. Especially with the current situation, we're a little bit distracted. So, and I'm not sure. I know that the city is. Let me ask. So I can't tell you if it is exactly requiring or just advising, but we can tell you that with all of the debris in the water, the speed of the water, all the rapids, and especially the cold temperature of the water, because it is coming directly out of the glacier, it is a lot colder than what the river would typically be. We definitely please stay away from the river, and we have cameras all over the river so we can see when people are along the bank and everything. And the more people that are on the riverbank, the worse the erosion will get. So the erosion and widening of the river will technically help reduce the overall water height, but it is so minimal that it's not something that would be reflected year to year. So last year, any sort of carving out of the river that happened still isn't as impactful enough to reflect in our forecast for this year. So the something that we do know that is impacted by the widening of the extra erosion is Suicide Basin itself has expanded around 2 to 3% since last year, just with calving events and with the extra ice in the basin and along those lines. So I can tell you that the reason why the forecast is getting up to so much higher than expected with how low the river was starting compared to last year is because of that expansion. And so while the river expansion and erosion may not contribute as much to the height of the forecast, the basin expansion is something that we take into account for all of our forecasts every year. And it's another reason why we are so diligent in mapping out the basin and tracking these things. Yeah, thank you for all your questions. This is great. We didn't get many questions yesterday. We love answering them. I don't know how closely this has been looked at, but we do have our senior service hydrologist has been meeting with the city and the Army Corps of Engineers for some time now to discuss possible mitigation efforts. But so if this was a viable option, it has absolutely been discussed. And if it wasn't chosen, then there is most likely a very significant reason as to why this wouldn't work. So I know that there have been some methods tossed around, but until something is decided on by the city, then we can't really, I guess, comment on what the impacts would be of all the different methods. But yeah. Oh. Yes, actually, there is the possibility that further back on the glacier there are other glacier lakes like Suicide Basin, and they are a lot further back. So the glacier is way too heavy um, eh, for any of that water to actually impact us the way that it is able to with Suicide Basin. But as the glacier continues to retreat, this is something that that we will be looking into. Now that we know a lot more information about Suicide Basin, we can definitely take that and use that for to learn more about future basins and future issues. Yes, I can go back to the timeline. So once we see the crest, that's where we're starting to see some of those impacts for Stikine Street. So once water crests over 16 feet, we'll start to see water creep into the backyards on Meadow Lane and Stikine Street. So it does depend on the level of your yard. Most people who have lower sections in their yard will most likely see this water start to creep in. But some areas that have some yards that may have higher areas may be able to avoid this for the time being as that water continues to creep up. So those low areas will definitely start to see it first. And yes, there is a lot of floating ice in the basin. If you've seen the pictures, you can definitely see all of the icebergs. And all of the icebergs in the basin. And even looking through at the front of the basin, especially every time there's a calving event, then all of that ice just floats in. And we were actually watching the overflow channel. You could see this little iceberg here. We were watching it kind of go back and forth when the overflow channel was still full 2 days ago. And you can see as the water starts to retreat, it comes out of the water, and then you can see it right here. So there is a lot of little icebergs throughout the basin that could impact something like that. So that was a very good point. We'll refresh the forecast here and just give you another look really quick before we hop off. But if anybody has any more questions, we've loved answering them. We've loved staying on and talking to everybody and hearing what you guys think about what's going on. So please, if you have any more questions or comments or anything, we'd love to hear. So this is where we're at. We're sitting at 13.91 feet. Let me check and see. So our most recent observation that came in close to half an hour ago, we were at 13.99 feet. So we are, as of this moment, we have definitely past major flood stage. We have passed that 14 feet. This graph hasn't updated yet, but it will shortly. This rate was actually it was a little slower than anticipated at first, but we have noticed that it's really starting to match up with the rate of release from last year's flood from 2025, or was it 2024? 2024, from 2 years ago, flood 2024. We've really started to see that rate match that. So it is possibly a slower release than last year, but we were also last year we also had the issue of the lake already starting a lot higher, and the initial release being masked. So we may have missed a lot of that slow release at the beginning, that may have been masked by how much rain we had gotten. So that's why last year's may have seemed a lot faster. Um, um, and if you would like to talk to someone about the siphon approach, my senior service hydrologist would absolutely answer your questions. If you want to email the office, you could email the office at juno.weather@noaa.gov, or you can comment on any of our Facebook posts or anything like that, and we will try to get back to you. So I'm not exactly sure how the GLOF would impact salmon spawning locations. It is a very short window within that spawning time frame. So most likely a majority of the spawning season will be not impacted. But I'm not exactly sure how the specific 3 days of increased floodwaters would impact that. So that's a great question, and that's something we can look into for you. And yes, there has been a lot of large trees in past years, and we've actually had reports of trees in the past, like a few days later after the flood, being reported as far as Young Bay, along the backside of Douglas. So the trees will make their way all the way through the river and into the channel, and then start dispersing from there. So it has definitely been an issue in past years. When we have a large flood, then that is definitely something we see, especially with a lot of bank erosion. So when I say little iceberg, there isn't that's more so just me calling it little because of comparatively to the rest of the basin. So that's not a specific measurement or anything like that. But when I look at an iceberg like this compared to an iceberg like this, that's where that comes from, because this is a lot bigger of an iceberg. And the basin may seem small over this image, but it is actually very, very large. So a good way to picture how big the Suicide Basin really is it from the long ways, it is around 4 cruise ships back to back. It's a lot bigger than you're expecting, probably. Yes, so we actually we had the opportunity to go to we had the opportunity to be a part of the Tlingit and Haida environmental forum, sharing forum from last year, and so that was a great way to see all of the different teams coming together to see how we can maybe help some of this bank erosion and help put some native plants back along the banks to kind of hold those soils in and everything like that, and to protect that wildlife. So that is definitely a question for, there's many groups out here that are working with us and working with the city to try to fix that. So we do have to hop off live now. But we enjoyed answering all of your questions, and this was great. Thank you so much for asking all these questions and sticking on the live with us. You can totally ask all questions on Facebook and on X and on Instagram and on YouTube. Those are all the platforms we've been posting on, as well as on the KTOO live stream. And if you have any damage reports or debris or anything like that, please, if you're posting them on Facebook, please tag us. We'd love to see those. It'd be very helpful for us to see all of that and your perspective. So thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll continue with the updates. So thank you.